For those of you who are familiar with how Pokemon do things around here, or for those of you who don't, Pokemon, unlike other card games, do a rotation system, which basically means every year they rotate out a bunch of cards from like a couple years ago. Basically, an entire year's worth of cards and sets are no longer playable, and you can only play from this set all the way up until this set, with our current rotation being from Scarlet and Violet up until our newest set, Destined Rivals, which is over the course of 2.5 years. So with this year they've rotated out the last of the Sword and Shield sets, and then next year we will be rotating out the first era of the Scarlet and Violet sets, so Scarlet and Violet up until Paradox Rift. So basically, players have to wait an entire year in order for, annoying cards or broken decks to be taken out of the game. It's very, very, very rare that the Pokemon Company will ban a card in Standard. Most of the time they ban cards in Expanded, which allows you to use cards from Black and White all the way up until the newest set, which can lead to some very powerful, very degenerate type of decks, which is why they have a ban list for Expanded, though I don't really know anyone who plays Expanded. But that got me thinking, what if instead of Pokemon just doing rotation, they also had a forbidden and limited list like other card games? Because I believe Bandai with Digimon and One Piece, they do ban list, forbidden, limited list, whatever. But I believe they're also going to start doing rotation in a couple of years. But are they also going to be doing a ban list alongside it? I'm not sure yet. But the main games that come to mind when I think of like a ban list is, I think Magic the Gathering does one, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Obviously. Because with Yu-Gi-Oh! There's no rotation, so you can use cards all the way back from Legend of Blue Eyes up until the newest set. And because of that, Konami have to step in and ban cards because they can be incredibly problematic for the game, so on and so forth. But that got me thinking, what if Pokemon implemented some type of forbidden and limited list, but also had rotation at the same time? Now, in the case of Pokemon, there's like very, very few cards that are ban worthy. Like if we're talking in the sense of like Yu-Gi-Oh, there's a lot of cards that are ban worthy because they just stop you from playing entire aspects of the game and are incredibly unfair. Pokemon does have some of those, but in Pokemon it's a lot easier to play around those types of cards, and they don't just completely halt you from playing the game because you might be able to, your opponent might get ahead of you, but if you're able to come back, then that's always a good thing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the top decks in the format and pick out a couple of cards that I think could be on this forbidden and limited list that I think would help fix the format or just help balance out a lot of cards and a lot of decks, because at the moment we have like 3 decks that are just like the top best of the best, and we're going to be getting a new one in Destined Rivals. So I think the power level needs to be brought down so that like there can be a lot more variety in the format, and there is variety in the format, but not every deck in the format is going to like be top tier. It's not going to win events, so on and so forth. There might be a few that sneak through here and there, like at the last regional, Roaring Moon won because God of War was very, very prevalent, so that's just an immediate counter to that deck, but it's not always going to be that case. So we'll start off with Dragapult, what many people call the best deck of the format. Looking at what the deck plays, immediately I can think of one hit, and that is Dracloak. Dracloak is played at 4 copies in pretty much every single list, and it basically allows you to play through Badoo and all these type of other lock-in cards, because you're Badooing your opponent, slowing them down, and at the same time you're evolving into Dracloak and getting a ton of advantage. Should Dracloak be banned? I don't think so, because Dracloak is played in other decks as well, as just a little form of consistency, allowing you to just look at the top 2 cards of your deck, pick one, put the other one back, so on and so forth. But I think Dracloak could be hit in some way. I think limiting the card is a bit too harsh, because we're obviously in an item lock format, so that means you're going to have to throw in a copies of Rare Candy, and if you are being item locked, then you're only going to have one Dracloak to evolve into that then becomes a Dragapult. So instead, I think maybe semi-limiting Dracloak would be a lot better, limit it down to 2 copies, so you're playing 4 Dreepy, 2 Dracloak, and then 2 or 3 Dragapult, however many you want to play. Limit the deck's availability for Dracloak, and if one of them gets prized, then you're only going to have one left in the deck. So it's basically going to force people to kind of accelerate into Dragapult a lot more faster, especially if they get item locked. They're going to have to quickly find those Dracloaks or quickly get into a Dragapult. If they're not item locked and the Draclock's a prize, then they're going to have to prioritize rare candy, go into Dragapult, all that kind of stuff. It basically just like hits the consistency of the deck a little bit, but doesn't automatically kill the card for other decks, because most of the time other decks play like 2 Dreepy, 2 Dracloak in order to just add a little bit of consistency to their deck, so on and so forth. Might as well take the opportunity to talk about Badoo, because this card is very, very problematic for the game. A lot of people hate it, a lot of people like it. I'm personally very 50-50 on the card. It can be very annoying to deal with, but in the same time it is very useful at help slowing down the game and helping people catch up to their opponent if they're like incredibly far ahead of them. So it has its benefits, and it also does have its downsides. I'm not entirely certain what would happen if people ban the card. I think there would be room for a lot more decks to appear in the format, and we would move away from a very support or reliant format and move more into item cards, which could then bring Wave into other decks to join into the format. We're going to be getting Frillish and Jellicent in Black Bolt and White Flare, so are we also going to have to ban those ones? I honestly don't think Badoo should be banned, because next set we're literally just going to get another Badoo, so there's literally no point in doing it. Plus we also have stuff like Banette in the format, we have Tyranitar, they're very like niche cards. They see like maybe like a little bit of play in some rogue decks, and Tyranitar can be very annoying to deal with because while it's in the active, you can't use item cards, and it also has an attack that mills you, which is very annoying. So like, do we also ban that because it's also an item lock? Do we also ban Banette because that's also an item lock? Like in the case of Badoo, it's free retreat, 0 energy attack, whereas the other two, you do need energy in order to use their attack. But I think Badoo should honestly just stay where it is for the time being, because if we ban Badoo, then we have to ban every other item lock card. Something else I think should also maybe be hit is Luminous Energy. This is starting to pop up a lot in a couple of decks, because it basically just allows you to facilitate any type of energy on any Pokemon, and a lot of decks are throwing in Monkey Dory. We'll get to Monkey Dory later, but I think Luminous Energy should maybe be limited, just because most of the time you're ever going to use it's on a Monkey Dory, but in the case of Dragapult, they can sometimes put it on a Dragapult to facilitate one of its types of energies. So I think maybe limiting this card down to 1, it'll basically just stop people throwing it in the deck because they want to play multiple different types of energies, or like facilitate other types of attacks, like attach it onto Monkey Dory to facilitate a Dark, attach it onto Dragapult to facilitate a Fire or a Psychic. I also think the fact that it can be attached onto any Pokemon to fill any type of energy is a bit powerful, because we are going to get Prism Energy again in Black Bolt and White Flare, which is only for basics. So limiting this basically just gives room for Prism Energy to be put in, so then you can use it on Monkey Dory and stuff like that, but you can't use it on Dragapult and all that kind of stuff. So it does have its uses, but at the same time Luminous Energy is the better one. So I think limiting Luminous Energy is just the right call, to be honest. So that's 2 hits for Dragapult. I was expecting a lot more, but we're going to move on now to Gardevoir, and immediately I want to talk about Monkey Dory. Monkey Dory is a very powerful card. Obviously you can move 3 damage counters off of one of your Pokemon and put it onto one of your opponent's Pokemon, not once per turn, like per Pokemon. So if you have multiple in play, you can do it multiple times. That's where I think the card gets a little too broken, especially because we're going to have Marnie's Grimmsnarl coming in, and Marnie's Grimmsnarl's ability allows you to attach energy from the deck onto itself, meaning that you can just manually attach onto Monkey Dory and not have to worry about, manually attaching onto your main attacker. Marnie's Grimmsnarl plays like 3-4 copies of Monkey Dory, along with cards like Frostlass, because you can put damage counters on all of your ability Pokemon and then just move it all onto your opponent's Pokemon and just knock out so many different things on the bench. We do obviously have cards like Shaman in the format, but Shaman doesn't care about Monkey Dory, plus it's Pokemon with an ability, so it's going to get, the damage counter from Frostlass. I think Monkey Dory, as a standalone copy, 1 copy, is fine, but multiple copies is where it gets a bit ridiculous, because you attack a Pokemon and then your opponent's basically removing 60 damage up to maybe 90 damage if they've got 3 of them in play off of that Pokemon and just putting it back on yours. So it's basically removing a bunch of damage you've done and increasing the damage of their own attack almost. So I think Monkey Dory would be limited to 1 on this pretend forbidden and limited list. 1 Monkey Dory, I feel, is more balanced than multiple Monkey Dories. In terms of Gardevoir, that's kind of the only hit I can think about. Maybe Bravery Charm, because Bravery Charm facilitates your Drifloon as well as your Screamtail, so maybe limiting that card to 1 basically puts you in a position where you can only use it once and you have to rely maybe more on other Pokemon, like your Gardevoir, like your Lily's Clefairy, all that kind of stuff. Maybe Mew EX, so you can choose one of your opponent's active Pokemon's attacks and use it. So possibly limit Bravery Charm, because Bravery Charm is also being used in other decks to boost the HP of stuff like Badoo, so then it's harder to knock out. Same with Luxurious Cape, though Luxurious Cape is only played at like 1 copy, but in some decks you do play multiple copies of Bravery Charm, and in some cases with like high HP basic EX Pokemon, it can be very annoying, just increasing the health of those Pokemon up to the level of like Evolution EX Pokemon. So Bravery Charm I think would be a good hit to be limited down to 1. Next up, Raging Bolt, and this one is pretty much a no-brainer, I feel. Noctowl. Noctowl is a very, very, very powerful card, especially when used in multiples. Now you may be thinking, well, why not just like hit Fan Rotom or something? I think Fan Rotom is fine because it can only be used on the first turn, so if you don't find it on the first turn, then you know you can't use it. But you know, Fan Rotom on first turn to get like 2 Hoot-Hoots and a Noctowl, or like if you already have Hoot-Hoots in play, you can just get multiple Noctowls for next turn, is kind of ridiculous. So I think limiting Noctowl to 1 is a very good hit, because it means, you know, you can't just use 1, get 2 cards you need, and then just like use another one, get 2 more cards you need, because Noctowl is a ridiculously powerful card. You know, Jewel Seeker, if you have a Terra Pokemon in play, you can just search your deck for any 2 trainer cards, and that's trainer cards, as in supporters, items, tools, stadiums, whatever you want. So limiting Noctowl, I feel, would be a really good hit. Teal Mask Ogerpon is one that maybe could be hit. I don't think limiting the card, I think maybe semi-limiting it. Most Raging Bolt lists only play like 3, so semi-limiting it to cut down your draw power as well as how many energies you could have in play could be good. I'm not entirely certain on that one, but it does seem like a little bit of a hit for the deck just to remove a bit of consistency, though I think Noctowl is a pretty big hit in of itself, and Raging Bolt is still pretty strong, though it's not considered like the best deck. It's still pretty powerful and needs to have like a hit or 2 here and there. Next up, according to Limitless, is Goldengo. I kind of don't think Goldengo needs a hit. Goldengo is fine, I feel. There's nothing like incredibly unfair about this deck. Maybe limit superior energy retrieval, but then that just like kind of completely kills the deck because you need to get those energies back. Yeah, I think Goldengo is fine. It doesn't have anything like too degenerate or too unfair, so Goldengo will remain untouched. I'll next talk about Terra Box, because this kind of goes under the same hits as like kind of everything else. You obviously have Noctowl, which I said should be limited, so Noctowl's down to 1. Teal Mask Ogerpon, I believe they only played like 1 copy of it, so semi-limit is not bad. 2 cards that I do want to talk about on this list are Crispin as well as Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. Personally, I think Wellspring Mask Ogerpon should be banned. Now I know what you're thinking, you won't ban Badoo, but you'll ban Wellspring Mask Ogerpon. I think this card is way too strong and way too oppressive, especially with a deck that's incredibly fast at getting it powered up, and you know, other decks that are incredibly fast at getting it powered up, because we have a bunch of evolution decks in the format, and these basic type of decks can just very easily get cards like this powered up. And it has 2 very, very strong attacks. Sob, which says that during your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat, so you can just lock something into the active spot. The more oppressive one, Torrential Pump, 100 damage, and then if you shuffle 3 energy attached to it into the deck, you can do 120 damage to a benched Pokemon. Obviously, we do have Shaman now, which is a form of bench protection, but even still, if you don't have Shaman in play, this attack is incredibly powerful, considering that like 100 damage is now like the new minimum for like stage 1 evolution Pokemon, like Ethan's Quilava and stuff like that. Very easily just knock out 2 Pokemon with this, and then you get to shuffle the energy back into the deck. Plus, we have Sparkling Crystal, which can just reduce the cost of the attack by 1 energy, so now it's only 2 energy. So you can very easily just attach for turn, use Teal Mask Ogerpon, and then E-switch, and now you can instantly use the attack. Just attach Sparkling Crystal, and you can knock out 2 Pokemon. So I personally think Wellspring Mask Ogerpon should be banned. This card can see play in just a bunch of different decks, because we have stuff like you know, Luminous Energy is one, so you can just throw it into something. It saw play in Lugia because we had Legacy Energy, which could facilitate any type of energy, and it also reduced the amount of prizes it gave by 1, so even when you get rid of it, you only get 1 prize card instead of 2. It's a very, very strong and very, very annoying card, so I personally think it should be banned. And Crispin, so Crispin is another way that you can facilitate these type of like multiple energy type of decks. I don't think limiting the card is a particularly good idea. I think semi-limiting it maybe, so then, you know, you do have the option to use it and, you know, get multiple energies out of the deck. Because limiting it is basically just going to kill off, you know, Terra, Stellar type decks and cards. So I think semi-limiting this card would make it a bit more fair, 'cause just playing 4 copies of it, you know, you can just use it, get 2 energy out, and the next time you can use it, just get 2 energy out, and just power up your Pokemon incredibly quickly is a bit annoying. And the same goes for Joltik Box. Joltik Box plays like 4 copies of it, so it would also hit that deck as well. And speaking of which, let's move on to Joltik Box. So immediately I want to talk about Iron Hands as well as Boss's Orders. I'm going to start with Boss's Orders because this card is very, very strong. You know, just be able to bring up any of your opponent's Pokemon whenever you want and, you know, just instantly KO it if it's something that you can easily KO, because that's most of the time what you're going to do when you use it, is to bring up something that you can instantly get rid of. And this deck plays 4 copies of it. Again, another card that I think should be semi-limited alongside Crispin, because most of the time other decks, they only play like 1 or 2 copies. Semi-limiting it also allows other decks to play multiple copies of it, but not play a huge amount of copies of it, because this card can very easily just be like boss KO, boss KO, boss KO, and you just win. And with stuff like Iron Hands, you can reduce those 3 KOs down to 2 KOs if you're getting rid of an EX Pokemon. So yeah, Boss's Orders down to semi-limited in my opinion. Iron Hands limited. Having multiple copies of this card is not fun and not fair. A card that basically just turns non-rulebox Pokemon into rulebox Pokemon and rulebox Pokemon into tag team Pokemon. Limited down to 1, but considering Joltik Box can very easily get it powered up for next turn. You obviously have Crispin and Joltik itself. That's what, accelerating like 6 energy into play if you use them both. Very, very powerful card and very, very oppressive card given the amount of evolution decks we have in the format. You can very easily just KO a basic or even then like a stage 1 evolution, sometimes even a stage 2 evolution if you have the future booster attached. Very strong card. Playing 1 of it's fine, because when you get rid of it, your opponent has to spend resources to get it back. Playing 2 of it or more is not fun. And looking at other lists, Flareon kind of suffers the same hits as Terrabox and Raging Bolt, same with Terapagos. Zoroark, I feel, doesn't really need any hits. The deck is very, very slow. It relies a lot on its other Pokemon in order to get its attacks out. Because, you know, Zoroark's good at drawing cards, and that's pretty much it. Archelodon, this really isn't seeing a whole lot of play, because, you know, it took a pretty heavy hit from rotation and all that kind of stuff, so it doesn't really need to see play. Roaring Moon's fine, Charizard's fine, Frostlass Munkidori's fine, and all the stuff down here is fine. And if we're looking at maybe future-proofing for when Destined Rivals becomes legal, again, we've already done that with Munkidori, with Marnie's Grimmsnarl, so we don't really need to hit anything else there. What else is coming? The Rocket stuff is like pretty mid, I guess. It's not amazing, but it's not bad. Ethan's Typhlosion is like fine. There's nothing that really needs to be hit on there. And even then, it might have taken some indirect hits from other stuff that I mentioned. Going up from the bottom, we semi-limited Dracloak, Crispin, Boss's Orders, and I think that was it for the semi-limits. We also semi-limited Teal Maskogapon. So we limited Munkidori, Noctowl, and Iron Hands, I believe. And then the only card that got banned was Wellspring Maskogapon. You know, but Badoo is fine. Badoo can reign free. And that's pretty much it for the video. Just a little discussion I had in my head for a little while of like, what if Pokemon used a Forbidden and Limited list alongside rotation, or maybe, you know, they also had rotation or they didn't have rotation and it's just a Forbidden and Limited list, all that type of stuff. Just a bit of a discussion about how the game could possibly change and how it could be a bit more balanced and all that kind of stuff, because at the moment the game is just like in a bit of a weird place. I'm personally not really enjoying the game all that much at the moment because of these incredibly type of oppressive cards like Wellspring Maskogapon, like Iron Hands, like Munkidori, like Badoo and all that kind of stuff. It's just kind of ruining the fun of the game, to be honest. And our next rotation is going to be hitting a lot of cards unless we get a couple of them reprinted in the next 2 sets of the year, because we're going to be losing all of our gusting options, we're going to be losing a lot of draw support, a lot of like incredibly powerful consistency Pokemon and all that kind of stuff. I don't know how the format is going to be looking. Well, we don't know what's going to be coming in the last 2 sets of the year. They're going to be the mega sets, so they could reprint some supporters, they could reprint some item cards and all that kind of stuff. But next rotation is maybe looking a bit bleak. I'd like to thank you all for watching this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, what you would ban and what you would limit or semi-limit in the Pokemon TCG. Do you agree with my hits and my opinions, or do you think there's maybe something I missed? Do you think there's something that I hit that maybe shouldn't be hit? So on and so forth. Make sure to like, comment and subscribe, all of that nonsense, and I will see you in the next video, whatever that may be. Take care.